بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, today we will explain a little about the book that we will be studying, and we will also give a brief overview on the best prints so that you know which copy of the book to get. The title that the author gave for this book is نزهة النظر في توضيح نخبة الفكر في مصطلح أهل الأثر. The points to note from this are that there is a fatha on the word nadari and also on the word fikri. Many err in this regard and pronounce both these words with a sukun. Likewise, it is fi tawdihi and not fi sharhi. Some copies have the words fi sharhi in the title. That is incorrect. The correct name that appears on many manuscripts is with the words fi tawdihi. Sheikh Nuruddin Itr writes, واسمه كما هو مثبت على النسخة الأصلية التي اعتمدنا عليها هكذا نزهة النظر في توضيح نخبة الفكر في مصطلح أهل الأثر. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah first wrote a brief booklet titled Nukhbatul Fikr. Upon completion, his students requested that he writes a commentary, and that led him to write Nuzhatun Nadhar. Depending on which print you use, you might see a distinction between Nukhbatul Fikr and between Nuzhatun Nadhar on the same page. For example, the color of the text might be different, or one text might be in bold, or there might be brackets, or the text might be written above, etc. So either the distinctions are on the same page, or maybe Nukhbatul Fikr is brought separately at the beginning or at the end of the book. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah discusses about the two books in his introduction, so we will inshallah elaborate more about it there. For now, just know that the book which we are doing is actually an explanation of another book. The question arises that what is the reason for us choosing this particular book? This book is generally taught in the 5th year of the alim curriculum. So students will argue that there are so many easier books that scholars have written. Many recent scholars have written nice, colorful books with more examples and even with diagrams. Others have books that are in Q&A format to facilitate easier understanding. So why not those books? To answer this, you first need to understand the objective of a Darul Ulum. The objective of a Darul Ulum is not to teach you the easiest of books. Rather, the goal is to build the ability and isti'dad of a student, so that when the student leaves the Darul Ulum, then he or she can manage to read the classical books of the earlier scholars. Scholars of the past were pioneers and masters of the Islamic sciences, and it is so important to read through their books. But it is not possible for every book of theirs to be taught at a Darul Ulum. Therefore, we study one book to learn the style of the earlier scholars so that we can then access the other books ourselves. You know, one Darul Ulum wanted to teach Tasheel al-Daruri in place of Mukhtasar al-Quduri. Tasheel al-Daruri is a commentary of Mukhtasar al-Quduri which is in question and answer format, written by Maulana Ashiq Ilahi rahimahullah. So I asked them, do you know what an important text Mukhtasar al-Quduri is? It is one of the fundamental works of the madhab. Those of you who completed ifta, you know well that Imam Quduri rahimahullah was a mujtahid fil masail, and his views and statements hold a lot of status within the madhab. So there is a reason why Darul Ulum still keep Mukhtasar al-Quduri in the syllabus. It is to give students insight on the writing style of the scholars of the past and to teach them how to read classical books, so that when a student qualifies and leaves the Darul Ulum, he can have access to the galaxy of books that were written by earlier scholars. You know, they say if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, then you feed him for a lifetime. So if students are taught how to read these intricate works and how to understand these classical books, they will be able to continue their journey of knowledge even after they leave the walls of the Darul Ulum. On the contrary, if they do not know how to read these books, they will have no access to books of earlier scholars. If students only read books with diagrams and examples, they might have ease in getting a brief overview on the subject, but they will not be able to excel in their field due to finding it difficult in reading and understanding the books of earlier scholars. Now you know why they still teach seemingly intricate books like Kanz al-Daqa'iq and Nur al-Anwar and all these other complicated books. It is due to this very reason. Yes, once you have understood the text directly, and then if you want to go through books with diagrams, etc., like Taqreeb Nuzha an-Nadhar of Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Shayi' and other similar books or other contemporary works, then go ahead by all means. But first, please do try to understand directly from the text of Nuzha. A second reason for choosing this particular book is because of the author, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah authored many books, and each of these books are crucial and indispensable in the field of Hadith. By doing this book, we will understand what he means in his other books. Students study Nuzha an-Nadhar in the 5th year of the Alim course, and then they studied Sahih al-Bukhari the following year. MashaAllah, some of you who are attending this course are also 5th year students. Next year you will notice that whilst teaching Sahih al-Bukhari, the Shaykh al-Ḥadīth will very frequently quote from Fathul Bari. The reason is because Fathul Bari is amongst the greatest commentaries of Sahih al-Bukhari. And who is the author of Fathul Bari? It is the same author of this book, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. So to understand what the author meant when he mentioned all these terms in Fathul Bari, and even to understand his viewpoint, it is necessary to first study Nuzha. You can also then see the practical implementation of the principles. You would also be able to inspect whether Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah rigidly followed the rulings that he mentioned, or whether the principle sounds good on paper, but it is difficult to apply the ruling. In short, this book is like a dictionary to his other books. Thirdly, arguably, there is still no one who can match Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. He added and refined and then condensed the entire epistemology in such a systematic way that it is unmatched. Being an expert, he knew how to blend and present the various topics. He literally put the whole ocean in a cup. And being in just a few pages, it is so easy to memorize Nukhbatul Fikr. Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah then wrote the commentary that is so encompassing. So even though some scholars changed the format and put the diagrams and tables, etc., the original Nukhbatul Fikr and Nuzha an-Nadhar are still the best. Therefore, please do listen and understand directly from the text and the explanation. Bear in mind that this is an advanced course, so it will not be like any other course that you have probably taken before. Our objective here is that besides just this course, you should be able to learn and develop a tahqiqi mizaj, the temperament of a researcher. Inshallah, I will be giving you references for everything that I quote. If perchance I do not give you the reference, you have the right to stop me and ask me for my source. In all circumstances, you should not just accept the reference that I give. Rather, you should refer to the source and confirm if what I told you is accurate or not. You should verify the reference I gave is actually correct. You must inspect whether the context in which I am presenting the quotation is precise. You should also ensure that I am not misquoting. Being of an advanced nature and bearing in mind that most of you are qualified ulama and some of you are even muftis, I will not waste time with translations. I know that all of you would easily understand the Arabic quotations. For those of you who are still in the 5th year or who are studying the book for the first time, there are 4 important components for you to derive maximum benefit. The first is mutala'ah. This is where you go through the text the night before the lesson and you try to understand it yourself. If you have difficulty in understanding anything or if you have any questions, then you should make a note of it. The second is attending the lessons live. Whilst these lessons are recorded, if you can attend the live lessons, then that is the most ideal. Even if it means adjusting your schedule or maybe going through some difficulty, as much as possible try to attend the live lessons. But due to the difference in time zones, if it is difficult to attend live, then you may listen to the recordings. The only request, or rather, since I am put in a position of teaching, I can say the only demand which I have is that you should stipulate a set time and act as if the lesson is live at that time. You should not miss out on listening to the recordings at that allocated time, even if it means postponing other important work. You should ensure and endure all difficulty in sticking to the allotted time. Otherwise, you know what will happen is that the first day you will leave out the lesson for a flimsy excuse. The next day you will carry out basic chores during this time. And before you know it, the recordings are piling up. You will then lose interest in this cause. The third component is takrar. After attending the live lesson or listening to the recording, you should go through the lesson and try to capture all that was mentioned. You should try to verbally say the summary of the lesson. Even though notes are being provided, you should write a brief summary and send it to me so that I can see how well you understood the lesson. Inshallah, my email address will be added in the notes. And the fourth component is answering questions, doing homework and assignments, accomplishing the tasks, etc. Inshallah, there will be a quiz after each lesson. Please answer the questions. If any homework is given, please complete the homework. At times, I will refer you to books for further reading. Please read those books. If you write a summary and send it to me, I will greatly appreciate it, just so that I can assist you even further. This is your journey for knowledge and I am ready to be your guide and assistant by the will of Allah. Inshallah, if you accomplish these 4 components, then you will get a certificate upon successful completion of this course. Due to sending the summaries and the homework, and since you would answer the questions after each lesson, I will be updated and keep track with your progress. Even if you are listening to the recordings later, by virtue of fulfilling these components, you will get the same benefit and support as if you had attended the lessons live. Hence, you will still qualify for a certificate. But more important than the certificate, by following these lessons, I am confident that inshallah you will have a good overview of ulumul hadith. You have the right to ask questions relating to the text or the explanation. You are most welcome to ask related questions at any time. If you do not feel like asking during the lessons, please feel free to send an email or even a WhatsApp message. Details of this will be given in the notes. My personal preference is that you send the question on WhatsApp so that I may simply respond with a voice note. In that way, I can even go into more detail. However, if you want the answer in writing, then please send an email. Bear in mind the nature of this science. You are specializing in hadith, And the only way that you can then serve in this field is if you verify. You cannot quote a hadith and say that your source is that a particular scholar quoted it in his lecture. Even worse, WhatsApp and social media can never be your reference. Hence, the nature of the science is that you have to verify everything and know the references of what you quote. You should have concrete evidences on every view that you adopt or any stance that you ever take. Therefore, besides teaching this particular book, my objective is to build your ability and mindset. After this book, your temperament and mind will be that of a researcher. This is the only way that you will be able to protect and defend the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As you know, this book was written more than 620 years ago. Nukhba was completed in the year 812 Hijri, and Nuzha was completed in the year 818 Hijri. At that time, there were no publishing houses. The practice was that the author would personally write his book, or a student or scribe would transcribe it. Then, to increase the number of copies, they would hire a scribe who would write multiple copies, or the student would simply just borrow the book from his teacher or a fellow student and he would copy it. The close students would have the opportunity of reading their copy back to the author, and if there happen to be any mistakes, they would correct them. The process of copying from someone else's book or hiring a scribe would then continue in the next generation and the generations thereafter. It is obvious that the more copies you are copying from and the further your copy is from the initial author, the more susceptible it becomes to error. For example, if Ibn Hajar rahimahullah personally wrote a book, then that print will convey to us exactly what he wrote. If a student takes his original copy and copies from there, then there are chances of mistakes, but they will be minimal. If a third person comes and he copies from the script of that student, then the possibility of error increases. When a person comes from another century and copies from the 5th and 6th copy, then there is so much more possibility of mistakes. With the establishment of publishing houses, a good print is that which is based on the manuscript of the author or a manuscript of such a student who read the text back to the author. It is not a print that has a beautiful and fancy cover or has colorful and smart fonts. This should never be the reason for even buying a particular print. So the best print is that which accurately conveys to us what the author wrote. For that, we need to see which prints were based on the author's manuscripts or manuscripts that were available during the author's lifetime. When publishing a classical book, some researchers just take any copy and get it typed out and printed. They do not care how accurate the copy is. Even for the typing, they would not verify to see whether the letters have been typed out correctly. Their objective is just to get the book published as soon as possible so that they can make a huge profits. Hence, these copies are also referred to as commercial copies. They are generally cheaper since the researcher is average, the typists are ignorant and hence qualify for only minimum wage, and it is typed out and published in just a few weeks or a month or two. But others try to get the original copy of the author or a copy of his close students so that they can have the most accurate version of the book. They go the extra mile of looking for the oldest copy or for the closest copy to the author so that the chances of mistakes are less. They even take the time to make sure that each letter and each word is typed out accurately. So these copies are generally slightly expensive since the researcher himself is highly qualified. Then those who are typing are also advanced scholars. Much time, effort, and even expenses are taken to gain the valuable manuscripts, and these copies take years to get to the shelves. Looking at Nuzha an-Nadhar, it was first printed about 140 years ago, around 1892. Because of the popularity of this book, there were numerous different prints thereafter. There are so many prints that it is impossible to enumerate all of them. However, since the researchers of all these prints did not acquire manuscripts from the life of the author, none of these prints are absolutely accurate. These prints were based on later manuscripts, and hence they were so vulnerable to error. They present the overall message, but they are also brimming with typos and errors. So they contain the author's message, but they do not contain his exact words. They are not 100% precise, or they cannot be considered as good prints. Even though we said that there were so many prints from the year 1892, for more than a century, there were no precise and accurate prints. Till around 22 years back, the script of Ali al-Halabi, which he used for his nukat, was the best print compared to all the other available prints at that time. Even then, it was not accurate. So if this best available copy was not accurate, you can well imagine the status of the other copies. Hence, advanced scholars like Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, rahimahullah, etc., they would still prefer referring back to manuscripts rather than relying on these prints. It was only at the turn of the millennium that we started to get prints that were based on reliable manuscripts. Hence, from all the numerous prints, there are only 5 that are worth considering. The first is the print of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr Hafidahullah. In the early 90s, Sheikh Nuruddin Itr Hafidahullah also published Nuzha an-Nadhar. He published it twice, in 1992 and in 1993. However, he copied from manuscripts that were written long after the author, hence these 2 copies of his were not accurate. Then in the year 2000, Sheikh Nuruddin Itr realized that he has to verify the contents of the book with a copy or a manuscript that was written during the life of the author. And then he should reprint the accurate version of the book. From all the manuscripts of Nuzha an-Nadhar, the original copy that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah wrote is not found. However, his prized student, Ahmad ibn Muhammad al-Akhsasi rahimahullah, he documented the entire book and read the script back to Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. So many times when the student writes and then reads his copy back to the author, then that copy is considered even more precise than the author's own handwritten copy. Because in this case, the author is actually verifying and checking everything. Hence, in this copy of Allama al-Akhsasi rahimahullah, you will find Ibn Hajar rahimahullah's own handwriting in 25 odd places. What further adds to the value of this manuscript is that Allama al-Akhsasi rahimahullah was not just any scribe, but he was a master in fiqh and hadith. He also became very close to Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, and hence he understood the temperament and the style of his teacher. You can understand how close he was to the author that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah agreed to actually sit with him and verify all that he wrote was accurate. So he completed reading the entire book in Ramadan of the year 851 Hijri, which was just more than a year before the author's demise. Remember, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah passed away in Dhul Hijjah 852 Hijri. Dhul Hijjah 852 Hijri. So he completed it in Ramadan 851, so 15 months before the author's demise. This shows how valuable the manuscript of Allama Akhsasi rahimahullah is. Sheikh Nuruddin Itr based his third print, so the one which was printed in the year 2000, on this manuscript. Since this manuscript was preserved in Dar al-Kutub al-Zahiriyya, which was just up the road from where Sheikh Nuruddin Itr's house is, it was very easy for him to get a copy of this manuscript. To further add value, Sheikh Nuruddin Itr inserted titles for the different chapters, because Ibn Hajar rahimahullah did not insert any titles. Likewise, Sheikh Nuruddin also added an index. He focused on the presentation, he included punctuation marks, and he divided the text into paragraphs. He also positioned the entire Nukhba separately at the end of the book. So this makes it easy for someone who wants to refer to Nukhba or who wants to memorize it. And to put the cherry on top, he also added beneficial footnotes. So a reminder before we discuss the next print is that the first two prints of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr have inaccuracies, but from the third print and the prints thereafter, they are the ones which are accurate. So thereafter the kitab was printed again, and all these will be good copies. The second print is the print of Sheikh Abdullah ibn Dayfullah al-Rahili. Whilst Sheikh Nuruddin Itr was busy with his print at the turn of the millennium, another scholar, Sheikh Abdullah ibn Dayfullah al-Rahili, he also decided to print the book. Initially, he had no knowledge that Sheikh Nuruddin Itr was working on the kitab, and hence he too began to work on the kitab. Coincidentally, he used the exact manuscript which Sheikh Nuruddin Itr was using. Later, when he saw the new print of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr, he remarked, فلما رأيت طبعة دكتور نور الدين عطر توقفت عن العمل وسررت بها. That once I saw the print of Sheikh Nuruddin, I became elated and immediately paused my project. He then praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he says that once he read it, فلما قرأتها للتأكد تبين لي أن هذا العمل على جودته لا يغني عما أردته فلا بد من المضي في عمله. He felt that there were still minor errors from the publishers. He claimed that Sheikh Nuruddin Itr did not recognize some of the words in the manuscript. And this happens when copying from manuscripts. For example, the word an would seem like a min, because the ain, this is a small gap. Or you might confuse a ra for a meme, or maybe for a dal. So Sheikh al-Rahili also felt that the presentation could be improved. Due to these reasons, Sheikh Rahili thought that he could improvise on the edition of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr. So 2 years later, in the year 2002, his first edition was published, and then in 2008 he published the second edition. So he used the same manuscript as Sheikh Nuruddin Itr. He also had the additional advantage of referring back to the print of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr. Sheikh Rahili also put headings and an index. He too put Nukhba at the end, and he also added beneficial footnotes, etc. This print was published by Matba'a Safir in Riyadh and by Maktaba al-Malik Fahd. Once this print came to the market, some chose this print, while others still preferred the print of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr as the best. So a question might be asked that in order to determine which is better, is it worth it to take the two prints and sit and compare every letter and every word? The answer to this is no. Since we know that both were excellent scholars and they both used the same print which was accurate, it will just be a good waste of time to now sit and go through and look at every letter and inspect every word of the book. It reminds me of what Sheikh Muhammad Awama Hafidhullah said in his masterpiece معالم إرشادية لصناعة طالب العلم: أبعد من هذا وذاك من لا يشتغل بشيء من العلم إلا بمعرفة ما طبع وما صدر حديثا ومن حققه وأين مخطوطاته وهو يظن أنه صار مرجع العلماء ومحط الفضلاء. Saying That some people, they just sit and they know, they learn which are the new prints which came out, which are new books on the market, who edited the books, where are the various makhtutat, and they think because of that they are now leading scholars. But then Shaykh Nuruddin Itr says these words which are worth writing in gold. والعلم فوق هذا وغير هذا العلم هو الحفظ والفهم والعمل والتطبيق والتخلق والتعبد والتصون والتحقق والمحاسبة للنفس والمراقبة لله والاهتداء بهدي سيد الأنبياء عليه أفضل الصلاة والسلام والاقتداء بسيرة أصحابه وتابعيه بإحسان. So please memorize and ponder over this brilliant definition of ilm. So that is the second print. If you want to, you can get that print. The third print is of Sheikh Tariq ibn Iwadullah. Darul Mansour printed this. Sheikh Tariq ibn Iwadullah, he felt that there was still some minor errors, and thus he gathered 7 manuscripts to determine what will be the most accurate. He acknowledged the efforts of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr and Sheikh Rahili, and he admits that their copies were excellent. However, he claims that both of them did not copy some words correctly from the manuscript that they were using. So the manuscript itself is valuable, but not everything is legible. You can well imagine it was written 600 years back. Sheikh Tariq was not successful in acquiring the manuscript that the above 2 scholars had. He therefore used their prints in conjunction with all these other manuscripts. Now, he does not disclose exactly which manuscripts were used, nor does he point out any differences between all the manuscripts. He only explains the differences between the copies of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr and Sheikh Rahili. To add value to his print, he added diacritical marks, i'rabs. He also added headings, he added punctuations, he also divided the paragraphs, and he brought the text of Nukhba at the beginning. So that's a copy if you want to. It's a wonderful copy to get. The fourth is the print of Sheikh Muhammad Murabi. This is the Dar ibn Kathir print. Sheikh Muhammad Murabi used 6 manuscripts and various prints. 3 of the manuscripts were read to the author. They are the Nuskha of Suwaid Keen. This was read to the author in the year 838 Hijri. The second is a manuscript found in Princeton. This was read to the author in the year 850 Hijri. Sheikh Murabi was unable to make out the name of the scribe or the reader of this manuscript. And then the third is he used the same manuscript of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr and Sheikh Rahili. Besides the manuscripts, he also used 4 prints. So which prints are these? The print of Mustafa Bab al-Halabi, the print of Dar ibn al-Jawzi, the print of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr, and the print of Sheikh Rahili. He used the manuscript that Sheikh Nuruddin Itr and Sheikh Rahili used, and he also used their prints as well. He also added punctuation marks and diacritical marks and tables and diagrams, and also marginal annotations, hawashi, of 3 great scholars, Kamal ibn Abi Sharif, Al-Maqasim ibn Qutlubagha, and Sheikh Ibrahim al-Qurani. So the first 2, Sheikh Kamal ibn Abi Sharif and Qasim, they are the students of Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, and the third, Alama Qurani, he came 2 centuries after Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. Many swear that this is indeed the best print. Finally, you have the print of Sheikh Turk ibn Musfir al-Abdini. This is printed by Dar al-Asima in Sana'a, and Muassasat al-Risala marketed it for them. I do not have this copy, and hence I cannot comment. If any of you get this copy, you can give us a review. Some say that this is the best print. So Sheikh Turki, he also used the manuscript of Ibn Hajar's student, Alama Akhsasi rahimahullah, used the same manuscript which the first 2 scholars used. He then took the liberty of going through the prints of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr and Sheikh Rahili to cross-check how they copied from the manuscript. Apparently, he highlights places where he thinks that they made mistakes. Besides that, he had 3 other manuscripts which were read back to the author. From what I am told, I think he gives a detailed commentary as well, and I would assume that this might be the best, but like I say, since I do not have it, I cannot comment. So these are the best prints. It will be best for you to use one of these prints rather than using other prints, even if those other prints are cheaper or even if they are fancier. If you can purchase the hard copies, then that would be the most ideal. Otherwise, you may refer to the PDFs. With that, we complete this lesson. Inshallah, in the next lesson, we will be commencing with the book. So please have your books with you. Jazakumullahu khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة